The average price for gasoline in the country right now is over $3.50, according to both AAA and the Lundberg survey. That's up 90% since the current administration took office. And so my question relates to why aren't we advancing projects like the Keystone XL pipeline to provide more supply and help bring gasoline prices down? You were asked to review that project, or the Department of Energy was asked to review that project by the State Department. And your expert, Dr. Carmine, I'm going to probably miss on the last name, you might have to help me, DeFiglio, is that Dr. Carmine DeFiglio? Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
All right. Anyway, he was asked to review the Keystone XL pipeline project and comment on it as to whether it would help reduce gas prices in the United States. And I'll quote from his report, gasoline prices in all markets served by PADD 1, the East Coast, and 3, the Gulf Coast refiners would decrease. Gasoline prices in all markets served by PADD 1 in the East Coast and 3, the Gulf Coast, would decrease, including the Midwest. And that was by your expert, Dr. DeFiglio, Department of Energy, June 22nd, 2011. So my question to you is, here we have rising gas prices, putting a strain on our consumers, on businesses, on the economy, and yet the administration turns down a project that would help us reduce gasoline prices. Why is that?
First, let me say I'm not aware of this report, so I can get back to you on that. But it is my understanding that, as I try to explain, that the gasoline prices in the United States are affected by refining capacities and by access of those refiners. The biggest bottleneck was the bottleneck from Cushing, Oklahoma, to Houston. And there was a very large price differential of crude in Houston, in Cushing versus crude in Houston. And so that bottleneck is being taken care of by the pipeline, the people who invest in pipelines. And as that is being taken care of as we speak, there are numerous pipeline plans for enlarging that pipeline, and one pipeline is being reversed so that refined products from Houston and Louisiana can be then ported to the Midwest. Another pipeline from Chicago to Cushing, also in the plane, is being built, as far as I know. So much of the pipelines in the United States that would bring oil from Wyoming, North Dakota, and to get the oil to the refineries that have the capacity to refine this oil and back up are being done in the private sector. And so we think that this is on a path that is creating jobs, that is going to be helping. In the end, the gasoline prices we are very concerned about, and the administration has taken, in addition to, I mean, this pipeline activity occurs because once you see big price differentials, the industry steps in and says, hey, we can fix that. In addition to that, we are doing a lot. For example, twice we've changed the mileage standards of automobiles. This directly affects the American public. By 2025, the estimate is the fleet average would be saving on average in Americans over the lifetime of that, the ownership of that car, about $8,000 in gasoline bills.
Mr. Secretary, so you're saying that while you've been part of this administration, gasoline prices have gone up 90%. Mm-hmm. We're looking at $4 gasoline by Memorial Day, maybe $5 gasoline this summer. You're saying you're willing to build all kinds of pipelines, but you're unwilling to build a pipeline that will bring 830,000 barrels a day into this country from our closest friend and trading partner, Canada, and will help alleviate a bottleneck in my state of North Dakota, where we now produce more than 500,000 barrels a day, but our oil is now discounted $27 a barrel, light sweet Bakken crude, off West Texas Intermediate. $27 a barrel we're discounted because we don't have the pipeline capacity to bring it down to the refineries. And we will put more than 100,000 barrels a day in that pipeline. Instead, we have to run trucks over the road. We have traffic fatalities. We have wear and tear on our roads. You just got done saying you're willing to build all these pipelines. Why not the Keystone?
The pipelines from Wyoming and North Dakota can be built. The administration actually has no, there's not a decision the administration need make on that. This is all in American territory. The only part of the pipeline the administration the State Department was asked to weigh in on was the part that went from Canada to the United States. So specifically, and the pipelines that I was talking about are actually helping bring the oil from your state down to those refineries. Those things are things where...
That's not the case. I just explained to you the pipeline that would help us bring the oil from my state down to the refineries.
Well, my understanding is if you look at the pipelines that exist today and you look at the major, quote, bottlenecks of the pipelines, those pipelines, and we're talking now specifically about the part of the pipeline that goes from Canada into the United States, that is not the immediate. My people tell me that for the next decade or so, with the anticipated increase in production of Canadian oil, that will not be the bottleneck. Well, we have a bottleneck now is in this Cushing to Houston. There's another bottleneck from Chicago, and there's also pipelines that go from your state to Chicago, and that pipeline goes from Chicago to Cushing. So those things are being built. So those are taken care of as we speak.
Being here, you've been out to our state, I think, several times. We appreciate it. We'd like to have you back. But I really am looking for help on this vitally important issue of energy infrastructure. In our last question and answer period here, we went through pipelines, and you said, well, we're trying to build all these pipelines. Well, and you talked, if I could finish, you talked about all these pipelines we're trying to build around the United States. So my question to you is if we're, and you'll acknowledge that there's thousands of pipelines under the entire country. So why are we unwilling to build a pipeline that will bring crude in from Canada and will help us move our crude in the country? Why is that?
Well, first, we're not unwilling. The President's position and the State Department's position, not the DOE's, but, we're not in the decision-making loop. We're asked to give technical advice on certain things, but is that they wanted an evaluation of the environmental impact. The pipelines that are being built in the country are investments of the private sector. And I see a lot of healthy movement in the pipeline construction within the United States, in large part because of the ability to get oil from shale-like rock. This is a big boom in your state. Mm-hmm. And you've got to get that oil to the refineries. And this is also wealth creation, and it's decreased oil dependency, all good things. The private sector is the one that's investing in these pipelines, and that's what it's brought about. The only time the government actually steps in is well, there's FERC issues, but in terms of the one you're concerned about is the one that goes across the border, and then again, that's right. A State Department issue.
If I may, Mr. Secretary, you brought up two great points. Your technical advice, again, Department of Energy, this administration's Department of Energy, the report I cited says that the Keystone XL pipeline will lower gas prices, not may, will lower gas prices, East Coast, Gulf Coast, even in the Midwest. In addition, in that report also says that it concludes that the PADD 3 refiners, the Gulf Coast refineries, will likely consume additional Canadian oil sands well in excess of what would be provided by Keystone XL pipeline. Again, you're experts. The reason I cite this is because some have said, well, we'll bring it in from Canada and then export it somewhere else. But your own experts have said that it will be used here, and we're going to need more, not less. So it won't be exported. So again, on your technical advice, you've said the Department of Energy that it'll reduce prices and it'll be used here, not exported. Your experts. So I appreciate your technical advice. I think it's very good, and I compliment you for it, and I thank you for it. Second, private sector investment. This is a $7 billion private sector investment, the Keystone XL pipeline. Not one penny of government spending. So again, I go back and say, given that it would bring us more crude, which we otherwise have to get from the Middle East or Venezuela, and you know what's going on in the Middle East, and it helps us with the bottlenecks. We have a $27 a barrel crude in my state, unbelievable traffic up there, which, because of truck traffic and so forth, oil trucks, that we'd like to use a pipeline for. So not only do we have discounts for our producers, not only do we have infrastructure problems, we have the consumer and businesses paying $3.52 a day, the highest it's ever been this time of the year in our country, which hurts our economy. Why would we conceivably allow this? I don't understand it. When you said we're willing to build pipelines, I don't understand.
Well, Senator, I don't know the particulars. I mean, usually when you have trucks, trucks are short-term interim solution to a region. If you expect sustained oil production, they're very expensive, as you well know, as well as being very disruptive. And
I agree.
And so,
which is why we need the pipelines.
And so again, if we're talking about the trucks in North Dakota and Wyoming, the private sector, I don't know the particulars about this, but I think once you see a lot of truck traffic, that's almost the last resort. You know, it goes pipeline, then it goes rail, and the last is truck.
Mr. Secretary, I'm looking for help here. Frankly, your experts have been helpful, and they've been right on the money, literally. Mm-hmm. They have. They've reported this thing straight up, and I appreciate it. Maybe we conclude with, as you know, in our state, when we talk about all of the above energy development, we don't just talk about it, we do it. If you go to our state, you'll see wind, you'll see biofuels, you'll see ethanol, you'll see biodiesel, you'll see shale gas, you'll see oil, the Bakken, you'll see hydro, biomass, all of these. In other words, we're really doing it. But the reality is, to get to that, all of the above, that means we have to try to develop all of them, not pick winners and losers. So I'm looking for help in this endeavor. Let's touch for just a minute on in situ. And Mr. Chairman, I may go over my time just a minute. I hope you'll indulge me. With the development of the Canadian oil sands oil, 80% of the new development is in situ, where instead of excavating, as is the traditional practice, you actually drill like you drill for conventional oil. You put steam down hole and so forth. And so your greenhouse gas emission is the same as for conventional drilling, right? So talk to me in terms of when with Canada, the United States, and some help from Mexico, we produce about 70% of our crude. We add Keystone, we immediately go to 75% plus, and we have the opportunity for much more. We then don't have to rely on the Middle East and Venezuela. 80% of the new development is in situ, which is the same footprint as conventional. Why wouldn't we be trying to do all of that we can? From an energy standpoint, from the concept of North American energy independence, isn't this a plan that gives us the opportunity to truly get to all of the above? And why aren't we doing it? How can you help us get this done?
Well, again, first, I agree that in situ is environmentally much preferred than the open pit mining that started with the oil sands,
right? Because
it leaves a lot of the really gunky stuff that we don't want down in the ground.
But 80% of the new development is in situ.
I understand this. It's still a little bit more carbon intensive because you're using fossil fuel to heat up the steam. But having said that, it is much preferred than open pit mining. Again, it's not a question of why don't we. This is where industry is going, because as they develop those sands, they're finding out that they're going to have to go deeper, and it doesn't make sense economically to open pit mining. There's also the environmental cleanup issues that they have to face when you have that open pit mining. And so the in situ recovery is much more desirable.
And you address that problem too with in situ, correct?
Again, because you're using natural gas to heat up the steam, that is going to cause more carbon, but the refining issues are much easier. All sorts of issues are easier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here.